and then most of the lecture is going to be a live demo of how to use it, and then the rest you can work with whatever you like. I've uploaded the slides and the demo project here, so if you want to look at it afterwards or follow along as good as you can, then you can do that, but probably you don't have to. It's better, it's just there. So, like full screen. Okay, so today we're going to talk about navigation graphs, which is going to be a very useful tool for you in later assignments and your projects, if you decide to use it, which I recommend if you have more than one fragment or activity. So a quick overview of today is going to be what it is, what you need to use it, and then we're going to create the basic app that you might be familiar with based on what we're talking about. So a lot of you have been doing the first assignment now and have had a lot of issues maybe with fragments, activities, and sending arguments, sending bundles, and getting the results back and sharing data between activities and fragments. Who had no issues with this? A few people did well. Anyway, most of you have struggled with this, and the reason navigation graphs have come to Android is, well, they hope to solve this problem and this unnecessary complexity when it comes to working with applications that have many fragments, lots of data transfers, many activities even, and when you have like managing your backstack and nesting fragments on top of each other, it's a pain to do this manually in the long run, because imagine you guys just work with 3 fragments or 3 activities. It's a lot of code just to like manage the backstack, to push fragments, to replace them, to do all those transactions. With navigation graphs, that's really what it solves for you. And that it's basically a tool to help you deal with those kind of complex situations with lots of fragments or activities. It will manage the backstack for you and automate fragment transactions. So you use a visual UI to create all of the possible navigation routes up front, and then that's handled for you. Animations between and transitions between fragments, you have an editor for that, so you can like have sliding animations like zooming, fading, whatever you like. You can design animations through XML to create transitions. You can work with it very visually, so you'll have, I'll show that when we get to the live demo. And you can also pass arguments between fragments or bundles between activities in a safe way, and also in a much more convenient way. You don't have to do all of the work yourself with creating the bundle, putting extras, and then setting it onto your fragment, or with activities you have to also work with the bundles. But with the navigation graph, you don't have to do all of this in the same way, and definitely not as manual. And it also currently works with the activities and fragments. But for today's example, I'm also going to use something that's become more popular recently, which is a one-activity architecture. And in Android, that basically means that your app consists of one activity, and the only purpose of the activity is to have a fragment in it. And then all of the logic is just divided among your fragments. And you use this navigation graph to basically navigate between them. And that's a very convenient way to work, and it's also been adopted by very many people recently. And Google even has a talk on last year's conference for Android developers that's about the one activity architecture. So if you want to learn more about why it can be a good choice, I will link the talk afterwards. But for when I did my project last year, and for every app since I've ever created, I've always used that mindset, because it makes it a lot easier to reason about things up here. And we're going to look at this with a live demo, where I use just one activity for everything. And that's also going to remove a lot of headache when it comes to working with activities, because suddenly you only deal with the fragments, and this tool will take care of transitions. So you can focus on creating the logic and implementing how your app should work, instead of working with tedious things like switching fragments and doing all of that, because really you don't really want to work with that. That should just happen on its own. Your app isn't defined by how it navigates and animates between fragments, because every app does that at some point. So your app should be, your time as a developer should be spent creating the logic and functionality of the app, rather than managing which view is currently on screen. So what do we need to use it? This is more from a Gradle point of view, you need those implementation requirements and dependencies. Currently, the latest version is 2.2.1. That version is going to change later. And second, if you want to use the better way of passing arguments between fragments, you also need to apply a plugin, which is called SafeArgs. If you use only Kotlin, you use .kotlin. If you use Java as well, then you leave that out. And what this is going to do is going to basically enable all of the library features that you need to use the navigation library. So that's it for the slides. Now I have a demo project that I will run. So just to quickly show you what the default is. So this project is uploaded on GitLab. It uses, for those of you who have not yet updated Android Studio, there's a new release now, 3.6. So I would recommend that you update, because some of the stuff we're going to be covering later requires Android Studio 3.6. And this project does that as well. So basically, the default thing we have here is navigation. We have a text entry box with just a quick entry. You can type some text. You can click a button, and nothing happens, because the purpose of this demo is to actually implement the rest of the app. So, let's just quickly see what this demo app is about. So the clue here is that you have a list of names and descriptions and how much money they spent on things. So it's a list of expenses. And then you somehow also have an expense entry fragment where you add expenses. So this seems familiar to all of you, right? Yes, exactly. So it's not supposed to be a copy of your assignment. It's just I'm using this because you're familiar with the data that goes into it. And maybe by looking at a different way of doing it, you will realize that there are we haven't unnecessarily tortured you with using letting you get familiar with the nitty-gritties of working with fragments. But that's a good thing. So yeah, we have one main activity with no code. We have the expense entry fragment, also with currently almost no code. I will zoom in better. Can you see in the back? Yeah. And there's an expense list as well, which is the default fragment with what we have here. Currently there are no elements in the list. And what we want to achieve by the end of this is that if you enter a name here, for example, Carl, and hit go, we want to end up in this fragment with the name pre-filled with this name. So you basically quickly fill the name, and that's what we're going to use the argument passing for. And then to get the data back, we're going to use new models, which we have briefly talked about before. We're going to use them again today. And we are going to set up a navigation bar at the bottom of the screen, so you can click between the fragments here. And we're also going to add a sidebar on the side that you can like drag out, and you can navigate in the sidebar as well. So, any questions so far about what this is about? No. Okay. So quickly as well, in the Gradle file, we have already navigation in here. And at the top of the file, with other plugins, we have apply plugin, and we're applying this plugin that's from the slides. You should do that in the top of the file for your own app, Gradle. And to make this plugin also visible, the last line from the slides goes in under the top level Gradle file, under dependencies, and we have to add this path so you can see the plugin. So those are the steps to get navigation up and running. Next, we are going to start in the main activity, because this main activity is going to be the host for all of the fragments, and that's where you have to set things up. And you only have to do this once when you set it up, and you need a little bit of, yes. You only have to do the setup once in the main activity, and after that it's all about just using it. So we're going to go through the setup now, which is going to be pretty much the same for every project, plus, minus, and differences. We are going to use every single possible navigation. That's why we have a sidebar and a bottom navigation bar for this one because you might not need it for all projects, but we're going to use it just because we want to show how it's done. So also, just a quick note, once you update to Android Studio 3.6, you will no longer have a design or text button down here. They are gone. Instead, you have 3 buttons up here. They're hidden, so there's basically text only, text and preview, and design. So they have been moved up here. So if you lose it, that's where it's gone, and that's why it's disappeared. Also, yes. So also in here, if you want to see the blueprint, that's not here. So it's style blueprint or both. It's up to you. I'm just going to make it match the screen and take the rest of the height space. So basically, the entire screen is currently this fragment. Actually, the height is also going to be much better in this case. So we have to change. Around that, we have a linear layout as well, because we're going to put some more elements in here, like the bottom navigation bar is going to go at the bottom. And around that, there's currently a coordinator layout, which allows us to use snack bars in a better way. And around that is the drawer layout, which is going to be the left, the navigation bar that you drag out from the side. So if you have a drawer layout, then you basically have this left swipe. This one is technically not needed, but it's in there for if you want to play around with snack bars later. So, and finally, it's just the fragment is the key thing here. So, in order to make this one work with the nav host, we're also going to set it to be the default nav host, which means this is going to be the default navigation graph, because if you have multiple activities, they can have separate navigations graphs. And finally, we have to specify a navigation graph. And that's the resource it's going to use to handle with the navigation. And the way you create that one is you go to resources. I will try to increase the font size as well. So on resources, if you right click there and go new resource file, you change the resource type to navigation, and then you give it a name like navigation main or navigation. For example, if you have a profile navigation, that's a separate activity that just deals with profiles, you can do this. And as far as I'm aware, you can nest navigation graphs inside of each other if you want to create really complex navigation. And what that does is it creates this folder, and I have nav name in here. And in here is where you're going to be editing your navigation in the future. So by default, we have the expense list fragment. And as you see, there's a home button here, which means when we launch the app, the reason this is here right now is because we set this to be the home. And on the side, you will have a list of all your destinations, which is what's in here basically. And there's a plus button here that creates a new destination. And now you have a list of all your fragments and activities. So since we want to at some point navigate to the expense entry, we're going to create that one. And we can drag this one in here. Now if we click the home button on this one, now this is the home fragment. So if I relaunch the application right now, this button, we are going to be in this one. So all you have to do to change what fragment you start in is you just choose the home fragment in the navigation graph. So a little bit easier than setting this up in code maybe. Currently nothing else does anything, so it's kind of pointless to be in this view. So we're going to go back and set this to the home view. And at some point we know that we want to navigate from this view to this view. Okay. So you grab this exit point there, and you drag it into the fragment you want to be able to navigate to. Now we have a navigation here. If you later had a deeper fragment tree and want to get this one into something else, you can keep dragging this out. So currently we haven't actually enabled this to be navigated, but we have created what's called a action. So all of these windows are called destinations, and the arrows between them are called actions. So when we have an ID here, we're going to change the IDs of all of these to be consistent. So this is our expense list, so we're going to prefix it with dest for destination, and we're going to just call it expense list for now. I don't want to rename. So the label that you see here, that's what's going to show up here. So currently it says navigation. If we change this to hello and run it again. Yeah, well, it's because we haven't actually hit that yet in the main activity. So we will get back to that. Second, when we have this, we're going to rename this as well to destination_entry. And we're going to call this one world for now. So here you have a list of arguments. So if you want this fragment or activity to take arguments, you can add them here. So we can work with parcellable, serializable, enums, strings, booleans, long floats, integers. So in this case, we want this one to take a string argument, which is going to be the text from this field. And that's going to be called, we're going to call it starting name. And here you can choose, is it nullable, which means is it optional. We're going to make it nullable because we want it to be optional. We can give it a default value, or you can make it an array. So I want this to be starting name, it's a string, and it's nullable. So now this one has arguments. It doesn't have any actions because it doesn't have any arrows going out from it. And it doesn't have any deep links, which is basically, say you have a website, for example, like Facebook, and you go to some URL. That URL can take you into an app if you're on the phone. And that's where you can create deep links, or you can create, for example, api.com/expense/0. And then you can make this link take you into that particular expense. So you can create deep links into your app, which will create a backstack for you. So if it's for this destination, that means it will put this on the backstack, it will go in here, and that link will basically take you into the app as if you have navigated in yourself. So we're not going to discuss that today, that's more advanced. Finally, we have the action here, which we're going to call action list to entry. And here you can set some animations. So we have enter animation, exit animation, when you pop, so when you go back out of it, enter animation, and then when you go back out, the exit animation. So we are not going to set animations right now because I don't think we have actually some default ones, so we can try to put those in later. But here's where you specify animations when going from this one to this one. You can provide default values for arguments in here. So if you want to have different defaults coming from a separate fragment into this one or from a separate into here, you can specify that here. But we disallow default arguments, so you can't fill it out. And likewise with the pop behavior, you can choose, for example, if you have a hierarchy with like 3 more in here, you can make the last one, when you hit the back button, pop all the way back. So you can basically choose how far back will you pop after going here. So for example, if you have this destination entry consists of 3 separate fragments with one name, then description, and then amount, you could have it so that no matter how far into this chain you were, if you at some point cancel it, you will go all the way back, for example. Yes, question?
Yeah. Can we edit this values through XML or just using the GUI?
These values? Yeah, you can. There's an XML for this as well. Okay. It's messy, but it's. Okay. Let's see if it's the same thing. So basically, it's a navigation XML where you have fragments and then you have actions inside of fragments, which basically define exactly the same thing. So this is also an XML-based editing. For this one, it's kind of easier to work with it from the GUI. Yeah, so that's basically it. So you have the destination, the action, and destination. So now that we sort of set this up, nothing is still happening here, but yeah.
Will the arguments survive on dictation?
The arguments, well, we're going to look at that as well, but the arguments that you pass in will just come in at the start of the fragment, basically, and then depending on where you store them afterwards, it's where it's going to survive dictation. So we will talk about it. Anyway, So now that we have this graph set up and learned how to basically what all the things are and how to use them, we left one important thing, and that's the main activity to set this up. Because right now we have the fragment here, we have a navigation graph, but we haven't hooked it up to the navigation system. So basically in main activity, in onCreate, this is where we have to do this. So, I have key. So there are a couple of lines of code that you're going to need. One of them is just you have to override the back button. So what this basically does, it says that the navigation controller is now responsible for managing your back button. It's just something you have to put in there. And for the rest of this, that's basically it until we get to the bottom navigation bar. So, but as we noticed, this button doesn't do anything, but let's make the button do something. So this button does not exist in main activity. So to make this button do something, we have to do that in the fragment that owns the button. And in our case, that's in the expense list fragment. And we can do that in onActivity created. So this is basically just an on-click listener. So we are going to work with that button. In our views, we have a, I didn't use an ID. So let's look at giving it an ID. So this is our button, and we're just gonna have to give it an ID. So I'm gonna call it Go button. For that one, we're going to set an on-click listener. So this is where we're going to use the action that we are creating. So on this on-click listener, when we have enabled that plugin that we did in the beginning, which is called the SafeArt plugin, for every destination we have on every action, it's going to generate a class. So since our destination is called destination expense list, and it has an action, it's going to generate a class that's basically called destination expense list directions. So the directions is basically what symbolizes that it has an action. So if we create a direction, and we have a destination, what do we call it? Expense. November. Here, expense list fragment directions. So expense list, yeah, there it is. I don't know why it didn't show up. Because I put this in front. Okay. So it's just called expense list fragment directions. And in this one, we're going to create a variable, just call it direction. And it has a static member which is called action list to entry. So this is the action that we want to do. And in here, since we specified arguments, this one now takes a string as a parameter. So you can just construct an instance of this class and pass all the arguments in the constructor. So we want that to be we have our pre-name add text input, and we want to grab the text from it. Okay, string. Yeah, so you basically pass the text of this text field to that argument. And now the only thing we have to do is we have to go find nav controller and we call navigate, and we pass it the direction. Done, and it's going to deal with the fragment transition. It's going to apply all of the animation, it's going to send the arguments, and that's it. So this is when we do it manually with a button. If we run the application now, and click that button, it will navigate to the other one. So we can call it Harold, hit go, and here we are. And currently we don't actually use the argument for anything. So we are going to do that now, so we can quickly fill it. So this is going to be in our expense entry fragments. And the way we read arguments from here is usually you have the variable that's called arguments. But this argument is just of type bundle question mark, which is not safe because you don't know if it's a string in there. Was there a question? We don't know if there's a string in there, we don't know what's in there, basically. So the thing that the navigation graph does is that for every fragment that has a argument incoming, it also generates a class for that. So in this case, we can see it here. It's called expense entry because that's the name of the fragment, and it's called fragment args. So that's the class containing the arguments. And we can just use that as a member variable, so we can just call it args. And the way we initialize it is we say it's an expense entry fragment args. Then we use by, and we call it fragment arg by arg. Right. So then we can't call it by. Nav args. So what this does is it basically allows initialization of this variable, and it uses the navigation args to initialize it. So now we have all our arguments in this member variable, and we can just access them as we want. So what we can do in onActivity created is we can just go if args dot, and we have starting name, so we can access it by a variable, and this variable has type string, so there's no doubt what type it has. There's no longer like any security about if somebody passes an int to this, which they can do with a bundle, it's not going to break your program because it's a type safe way to pass arguments. And it's a string question mark, so we just go if that one. Well, we can even go just args starting name. So basically, if this one is not null, we want to set that our name field .text equals this one. So now we should have that set up. So it's a much easier way to work with arguments, as you can probably tell by now. So if I now just type Carl in here, hit go. Oh, maybe it's no. Or maybe it's because it's pre-selected. We actually don't know if it's not or. So this is the fun thing about a live demo. Things go wrong. So let's just make sure that it's not no. Wonderful log message here. There we go. Expense, and we are going to log the string. And I'm going to try that again, see if it's somehow null. That might be bad. So it's actually in there. So it's probably because I have this pre-selected, which is a bit inconvenient, so let's instead maybe try the description field. In that case, we're now going to make this the description field, so hello. It doesn't really like that. Well, at least the string has been passed there, and that's the point. The point is that the arguments are easy to work with, not that this text viewer refuses to show it. Yes. So no. We have to do one. At least now we can log it. That's nice. The important thing here is that we actually got the argument.
You could have tried to load the value of the text field after having set it.
Yeah, why
See
not?
if it can actually change.
Let's try to see if it actually changes it, and then the UI maybe breaks it. Yeah, it's there apparently, but it's not there. So, no. Yeah,
Did you show where you created the direction?
that's also created, but yes, I will show. The class is also generated. But yeah, so anyway, for the arguments, we have to just create a member variable, which is the type of the arguments, and we have initialized it by the navigation arguments. And then you can use them in here, even though this one refuses to show it. So if we go back to the expense list, so this is the, also as this one does now, the back button works because the navigation hooks up with the back button. So this is, we just did an on-click listener for the Go button that creates an instance of the directions class, like this. And since we said that it takes a string argument, we just pass it a string in here. And then you have to use the nav controller and call navigate and pass the directions. The other thing you can do in here is if your fragment takes no arguments, there's no directions class. So you can just pass the ID directly. ID.destination. You can just pass the destination entry directly, and then it's just going to navigate to whatever destination has that ID. So this is if your fragment has no arguments, you can just pass the ID of the destination, and that's the one that's in the navigation editor, that's this one. If you pass it this ID, it will navigate to that fragment as well. That's the other way to do it. You can also pass the action directly as well, which will do the action, but this is bad since it takes an argument, so you would rather use the directions. Anyway, now we're going to use do one more thing with the navigation graph, which is to hook up the bottom menu and the sidebar menu. And we're also going to replace the toolbar with our own toolbar. That's recommended for two reasons. I'm going to do that. So to do this, we have to go back to the main activity, XML. And at the bottom here, we want to add ourselves a bottom navigation graph because we want a bottom navigation bar at the bottom. So it's called bottom navigation. Jesus, I remember which one it is. Yes, the bottom navigation. And when you put that in, and we want it inside the linear layout, so it goes below our fragment. Only thing you have to do is give it an ID, make it wrap the content on height, and match the parent on the width. Currently it's invisible, so we need to do one more thing, and that is we need to specify what menu this one uses. So to create a menu, we go to res, new resource file, and we call this menu main, and it's going to be of type menu. So by doing this, we are creating a menu item. So yeah, let's go back to this editor. So this is going to show us how to create menus. So a menu consists of items. And it's got a text title, which is, for example, main view. So you'll see a preview of the menu here. We are going to call this one expense, not like this. We're going to call it expenses. You can add an icon to this if you want, and we want that because that's what's going to show on the bottom bar. So let's quickly add an icon to the application. We go res new vector assets. We are going to add ourselves this. So this is going to be our expenses. White by default because then you can tint it to any color. And we're going to make the icon the IC list. And we're going to make the icon tint to this dark gray, I guess. Currently the icon doesn't show here, and that's because we have one more option in here that is called show as action if room, and that means, so yeah, it's impossible to see, but basically what show as action does is if it's room on the, if it's room up here, then the icon will show up here. So many apps have like a settings wheel up there. So if you create a settings menu, you can do that through this one as well. But the idea here is that the icon is there. So, and then we want one more item. So let's quickly add this. Title is going to be new entry. And our icon is going to be, we're going to add the new icon really fast. New add plus. This is nice. Playlist add. And then the icon thing is going to be dark gray. We don't need like so. So now we basically have two menu items. So the cool thing comes now, how do we make these guys navigate somewhere? So the idea is that if you set their ID, you set the ID of these menu items to the same as the destination you want to navigate to. So this one is going to go to the expense list, and this one is going to go to the destination entry. And now you hooked up your menu. So if you click these buttons, there you want to navigate to the ID of the destination that you set here. So all we have to do now is here we have to specify our menu to be this one. So that's the one the bottom navigation bar is going to use. And in main activity we have to call one other function as well. It's going to be, first we have to get the controller. Find nav controller. We want to find the nav controller in the IP, this one. And then we have bottom nav, which we haven't given an IP, I think. It's called bottom nav. So import. And then we have to call setup with nav controller on the bottom bar. And now it's hooked up. So if we go to our application now, it's a because I make this one match parent, and we don't want to do that. It's going to be 0 at height, and the weight is going to be 1. Yeah. So now we can see in the preview there's a menu bar at the bottom. And you can also see that, so now we have this navigation bar that's hooked up. So we have expenses, and we have new entry, which is great. Amazing. Right, because it doesn't have the arguments, but that's made sure that it can be default. I said that it should be default. Well, let's go to our menu and make sure we use the action. No, okay. Well, let's get rid of the argument. I guess since it requires an argument, that's not going to work for us. But the point is the same. Yep. So for now, we are going to review. Sorry. And then we can change this one back to destination entry. And in this one, we can no longer use here, it means direction, so it doesn't take an argument. So updates. In here, since there are no arguments, this path doesn't exist anymore. And same with this stuff, so I have to just change that for now. Just to prove that this menu is working. So anyway, now it's hooked up. So now you can use the bottom navbar to go between them, but you can also use the button, which currently is useful. I created it so we can show how to type arguments. So if you add more elements to this menu, they will show up here. They will play the animation, they will highlight the one that's selected, and that's all automatically done for you because of the navigation bar. So finally, we'll want to add a drawer on the side as well. We already have the drawer in the XML, so we have a drawer layout, which is what you need to get to the sidebar, and that has to be the outermost layout, so it has to be the top one. And this one has the ID main drawer layout. So what we have to do is main drawer layout dot set up. This is not important as well. Okay. No, I didn't have this one. You have to look up the documentation. Yeah, okay, well, should be called the same thing. Should be exactly the same thing. Okay, well, and drawer layout, set up navigation. Okay. The only thing we care about is the function. Right, so this is actually well, let's steal it from another package. Same thing. So. Oh, there it is. It's called. Sorry about that. Set up action bar with nav controller. And then there's nav controller. It's our nav controller that we already found. And then the optional argument is the drawer layout. So that's where you just pass the main drawer layout. So, yeah. And now we have this fancy thing, so we can click that. Oh, it doesn't actually have a menu associated with it yet, so we have to do that as well. The same for with the bottom you want. You specify a menu, and we want it to also use the main menu. So you can have a separate menu in this one if you want, because it's a sidebar, so it has room for many more elements. But now if we open it, oh, did we not set it up? Well, let's go back to using we actually forgot the step in here. So we are going to add one more thing to this one. So again, at the top of the linear layout, we're going to add something called a toolbar. The toolbar is essentially the same as the action bar, except it's backwards compatible all the way to Android 5, so it's going to look the same no matter how old your device is there, more or less. So as you can see now, the toolbar is in here. Its ID is toolbar. But this is going to look a little bit weird, since now you will have two toolbars, and that's not so nice. So instead, to fix that, we have to go into values and styles. And in the theme here, instead of having dark action bar at the end, you just go no action bar in the styles for the app theme. now we have a blank action bar or a toolbar with this one. So what we have to do now instead is use so it requires a couple of more lines. The first one is that we set the action bar to be the toolbar. So this basically says that, hey, we're not going to use the built-in action bar on later versions of Android. We're going to use the toolbar, which is the ID of this one. And then there is a class called appbar configuration, which has a set of home destinations. So for this app, we only have one home destination, and that's our destination expense list. Basically, what that controls is if you
Press control.
control. And basically what that means is for every one that you specify as a home destination, it's going to have the 3 lines in the top left. So basically it's going to act as a top level destination, so we're going to see that. And here's the drawer layout that we're going to pass. We're going to pass the main drawer layout in there. So instead of doing it with the action bar, which was the other call, which was set up with the action bar, we're now going to set up it in the toolbar. And then we are going to call this one which is we find the toolbar and we set it up. We can just go to toolbar and set it up. Yes. So we have to also call the toolbar. Let's just fix the formatting here. So basically, at the end of this, we set the support action bar. We set to create a configuration for it that says basically these are your home destinations. We pass it a drawer layout because we want to use it as a sidebar. Then we call toolbar setup with nav controller and the bottom nav setup with nav controller. So if you only have a bottom nav, you will have been done with this one line and this line. If you also want to use the toolbar and the sidebar, then you need the extra lines as well. So we run it now. We have this sidebar that opens Google Forms.
Something I'm wondering about, is the navigation component and everything compatible with all the tests for the assignment?
Probably not the first one. Well, I mean, it should be, but yeah, I don't know. I forget. Okay. Crash it again. No drawers. Let's grab it. No? Okay. Well, get rid of the coordinator just in case message opens. Shouldn't be anything more than that, but it's crashing now. So. Basically, that's the quick overview of navigation. The rest of this is just making this one not crash so I can prove it. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. I don't use one.
Will this example be available?
Yeah, I'll post the version before I did anything, and I'll post the version that we have now.
Yeah, because I couldn't keep up with everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, I'll give you some resources to look at the refreshers as well. Let's just quickly go down to the Yeah, I'll fix it later. But the idea is that you will get the sidebar. I'm sorry I didn't have time to test this properly before the lecture today. It's kind of very recent tool as of this one. So hopefully at least you got the main idea of navigation and how to set it up. I don't think you don't expect you to remember everything, but if you want to learn more, there's a application. If you go to the documentation and go /guide/navigation, you have a getting started guide that will also basically take you through the same steps. So within dependencies, the navigation graph, the editor, and how to set things up. So this one is basically a refresher of what I just did. I will post the code as well so you can look at it. And also if you are interested, there's the Google there's this one. So if you want to learn about it in a video format as well, you will have basically the same drawer there. Yeah, so you can watch this one as well if you like. I'll post the links on the wiki, and for now you can work on the assignment and whatever you will, and I will help you if you have any questions. So thank you.